Bum bum bottom 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 doobie doobie da 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 bum bum bottom bum bum bottom doobie doobie da da doobie doobie da da doobie doobie da da bum bum bottom bum bottom bum bum bottom ba da 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 ba da.
You are now in session with the Comic Book Couples Counseling Podcast. I'm Lisa Gullickson.
And I'm her husband, Brad Gullickson.
And each month, it's a closed relationship, y'all. He owns this. Not owns like that. Like, okay, whatever. I'm his wife, but I don't make a big deal of it. And each month we evaluate a different iconic romance within the four-color realm. In this episode, we're celebrating Free Comic Book Day, and we hope that you are too, with Steve Anderson, owner of the Third Eye Comics empire, hanging out in his new Buys and Bargains location in Annapolis, Maryland. Plus, we are also joined by cartoonist extraordinaire Jesse Lonergan, discussing the launch of the new Mignolaverse title, Miss Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea, from Dark Horse Comics.
Gosh, there's a lot going on in that introduction. You know, a little peek behind the curtain. We were writing up all that stuff for this episode. And, you know, I do like a pass on it first. And then Lisa goes like, your version is terrible.
And I rewrite the whole thing.
This is how it should sound. But still, there's just so much information to get across in that introduction. And I think you did a great job, Lisa. Thank you.
Why, thank you. You even threw in a curveball, like, I'm her husband, as if I was, like, flirting, like I was flirting with the listener. And you're like, I'm her husband. And I'm like, we were just talking.
I'm a proud husband, and sometimes I like to throw in a curveball to, you know, inject a little energy into those introductions. You know, Free Comic Book Day, it's always such an event in our household. We usually do kind of a pub crawl, but a comic book shop version. We always go to Third Eye Comics. We go to our shop, Vienna's Big Planet Comics. Mm-hmm. We head over to the Amazing Comic Shop in Fairfax. We go to Falls Church and we go to Victory Comics. We go out to Burke and we go to Toshi Station. Like, we try to hit every shop that's in like a... What's that? What does Tommy Lee Jones say in The Fugitive? I want a hard target search of every gas station, residence, warehouse, farmhouse, henhouse, outhouse, and doghouse in that area. Except all those things are just comic book stores.
Yeah.
And I totally didn't just stop the recording, look up that quote, and read it to you.
Yeah, and in that time, Lisa completely lose her train of thought and forget what we were talking about.
Free Comic Book Day,
Oh, yeah!
Lisa.
The most wonderful time of the year.
A huge event in our house. It is the most wonderful time of the year, but we've never done a Free Comic Book Day special episode.
We have not.
Until now, and that's what this is.
This is happening.
And to do a special, you got to cram it with guests. You can't have just one guest. You got to have two guests. So we're very thankful that Steve agreed to come on the show and Jesse agreed to come on the show. Actually, like, again, full disclosure, another peek behind the curtain, Steve reached out to us because he was very excited about the opening of the Bargains and Buys location in Annapolis, Maryland. And we're going to get into exactly what that shop provides the community.
As of right now, you, the listener, can go to the Third Eye Comics Bargains and Buys store just around the corner from the original Third Eye Comics and go a-scroungin'. But at the time of this recording, not this recording, but the recording that we did at Third Eye Comics.
Right.
Steve gave us each an $100 gift card to go nuts in their new store. And we were like that, like if you follow my Twitter, that armadillo who picks up leaves, who gathers leaves in between his little four mitts. That was Brad and I in these bins, and we were beside ourselves.
Yeah, so what you are listening to is, I guess, sponsored content. It's SpawnCon. Some of the first SpawnCon we've done. I mean, we've had offers, but we said no to Shave My.
That's right. We have we have a try to keep it above the belt policy.
Yeah,
I guess I would call it a policy.
Above the belt SpawnCon at Comic Book Couples Counseling.
But we're open to negotiations.
Yeah, so it was really wild and extremely nice of Steve to give us those gift cards. And you discover that when you are scrounging through dollar bins, it's actually pretty hard to spend $200. It's hard to pick up 200 comics, but we did it, friends.
We gave a valiant effort, yes.
Steve left us in the showroom. He's like, all right, well, just take your time and then, give me a call and then we can go record and discuss what you guys found.
I was so happy because I thought that while we were going through the bins, he was going to be standing next to us. And for me, going through bins is kind of like a solitary and quiet kind of activity, very meditative. And so when he's like, you get to do this in the privacy of your own brain, I was like, hell yeah.
I love that in the conversation you have actually explain that to Steve also. And you explained that to him also before we started scrounging. So I think he caught the hint that we wanted to be left alone. I think he was a little surprised that we then spent 3 hours going through every single issue.
We did do
plus
that.
Plus the $5 variants, plus the back issues.
Plus the half price trades.
Yeah. So he eventually came back out. He's like, are you guys done?
I'm like, how can we tell?
I guess we are
like
done.
We're like Captain America. We can do this all day.
And so, yeah, we filled up a couple short boxes of comics, and then we called out some of our favorites and discussed them with Steve in this chat. And it was all in the spirit of Free Comic Book Day, because as great as it is to go to your local shop and pick up all the free books that they are offering, you have to remember that they are spending money to get those free comic books. So when you're there, give back. This is an opportunity to say thank you with your money.
Free Comic Book Day is not a customer appreciation day. It is a comic book store appreciation day.
Last year, we did a PSA with our 5 kind of rules of how to behave in a shop during Free Comic Book Day using the 5 love languages. And you can watch it. There's a link in the show notes to our YouTube channel, which we rarely update with actual video content, but this is some of the rare video content. And I love that little video because, again, we stress what Lisa just said. This is a comic book shop appreciation day. Every other day is a customer appreciation day.
Exactly.
So pick up those free comics and use it as an opportunity to discover new comics.
For example, I just picked up this beautiful hardcover. I'm holding it up to the microphone. What a goose. You can't see it.
But I can.
Oh, yeah. Look,
and it's
Brad,
so pretty.
I picked up this beautiful hardcover of The Wondrous Wonders by Camille Jordi from First Second. And I picked it up strictly based on the cover. The art is beautiful. But it's kind of like an Alice in Wonderland kind of story where a girl, she's upset, her parents have remarried, and she now has step siblings, and so she runs off into the woods, and she has to vanquish an evil empire.
Yeah, it doesn't look
really,
like
really
a lot of First Second books. It looks like a storybook, a hardcover storybook, and it is one of those comics where you do a flip through and you go like, yeah, okay, insta-buy.
It's beautiful. I'm finding a little corner of myself that might be a tad cottagecore, and I feel like this appeals to that little sliver of me.
Oh man, I love the idea of you exploring your cottagecore-ness. My recommendation for a new graphic novel is Blood of the Virgin from Pantheon Books and cartoonist Sammy Harcum. This book has taken 14 years to come together. I read it last night in a blitz. It's a big, thick hardcover. It's set in early 70s Los Angeles. It's about a wannabe filmmaker grinding it out in the exploitation scene. And he's an unlikable person. It's one of those comics where you're like, oh, this guy's such an a-hole. Can I take much more of this book? But as you progress, the book starts to reveal certain things. And then in the last third of this story, something is revealed that I thought it's beyond revelatory, and it made me reflect on my own life in a way that a comic hasn't recently. And when that happens, you got to celebrate it. So yeah, Blood of the Virgin. I'm really excited for Lisa to read it. I think it's probably the best graphic novel that I've read all year.
Awesome.
So highest recommendation from Brad. Be on the lookout for that. I'm sure your local shop has it. It just came out last week.
Both of these just came out last week.
Yeah. And again, they're both books where They just feel good in the hand. They're weighty. They're beautiful looking. They have their own unique vibe.
Their plots are exactly the same. I don't know where I was going with that.
Are not exactly the same. And I should shout out Kevin over at Big Planet Comics because he recommended Blood of the Virgin for me. And that's a great reminder to talk to your comic shop proprietors. They've got good ideas of what's out there.
And they kind of know you. By knowing your pull box.
Yes.
It's actually a very intimate relationship if you think about it.
Yes. And Discovery, Free Comic Book Day, again, is all about Discovery, which Lisa discusses with Steve in this conversation. So I guess that's enough teasing for the Steve Anderson Third Eye Comics chat. Again, our thanks to him for inviting us to come on over and buy stuff and for giving us the money to buy that stuff.
Yeah.
Paying us in comics is our favorite kind of sponsored content. So any comic book shop out there wants us to go shop through their bins and do a little segment on the podcast, we're totally open to it.
It's kind of our dream.
And then after this conversation, please stick around because, yes, Jesse Lonergan is on the show discussing Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea, the latest Mignolaverse book. We've read the first issue. We love it. We're huge Jesse Lonergan fans. He's one of the best cartoonists working today. If you ever see him at a comic book convention, you got to go up to him and you got to buy a copy of Drome, his newspaper-sized comic that he's currently working on that, I think we talk a little bit about in this conversation too. So you've got one conversation with Steve Anderson and Third Eye Comics, and then you got another conversation with Jesse Lonergan and Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea. Don't go anywhere. Steve, this is usually the part where I welcome you to the Love Nest.
But here we are in your Love Nest.
But we're in your Love Nest. So we're going to welcome ourselves into your Love Nest at Third Eye Comics. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, no, thanks for coming. It sounds like you guys had fun.
Oh, my goodness. Did we have fun?
Yeah.
Please, if you haven't already, head over to our socials and look at all the comics that we picked up in the various dollar bins and 50% off trades and $5 variants and the back issues. Oh my God, we spent, I don't know how long we spent down there because I went into...
just melted away.
Exactly.
We went to another place. We went into the place of the flippage.
Yeah. We've talked about Third Eye Comics on the podcast in the past. We had like a nice little conversation back in the pandemic or during the lockdown days.
Yeah. Oh, wow, it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Okay, right on, yeah.
And so our listeners certainly know how much we love your shop. But
Thank you.
Why create a buys and bargains store?
Well, buys and bargains sounds good. But no, we wanted to call it Third Eye Throwback, but there's already a couple Third Eye Throwbacks out there that do like jerseys and stuff. So we couldn't do that. But we wanted to do like a throwback comic shop that's kind of a sidekick to our Annapolis store, where we could basically like kind of we already had the storefront where we were buying like collections and stuff, and we just figured that it would make sense. Like, okay, let's maybe sell some of this excess that we're going to have from breaking down these collections. And we wanted to give people, it's extra stock for us, so, we want to move it out. But at the same time, it's fun. Like, it's just a lot of fun. Like,
well, what I love about, just contrasting the two experiences of the greater Third Eye store and then the bargains and buys is
which is a block down from the main Annapolis store.
And it's that's where you want to do your focused, just tune out the world and just go into that meditative space of just looking at those books and letting your curiosity just kind of open up.
Yeah, so it's a different vibe when you come into this store versus the other store. It's not necessarily solitary, but it allows you to become solitary.
Yeah. It's definitely more chill. Our other stores are very busy stores.
They're fun. They're a community feeling. The employees are wonderful. They'll come up and they'll ask what you like, and they'll come up with something that you're going to want to buy.
Yeah. And this is more just you come in, hey, how you doing? Dive in,
zone out.
We just keep it chill, and it's just fun. The other thing that we can do here too is our back issue section here is probably the largest of all the stores, not including the dollar books, but just the regular filing cabinets of Prices Marked stuff. And the stuff that we carry in there is stuff that we can't normally fit at the back issue sections of the other stores. And for me, I think that's really cool because, like, I can't, like, fit entire runs of Grendel at those other stores because the demand is not as high.
Yeah.
I got to make sure I have lots of Jim Lee X-Men. But here, like, it's more kind of a targeted niche. So, like, this is where my peeps who are going to want to buy some Grendel are going to end up.
Yeah, we were discussing it on the drive up here, and we were going, well, what kind of dollar bins are these going to be? Because we've just, like, rediscovered our obsession for dollar bins.
Yeah.
Going to cons and whatnot. And, you know, sometimes those dollar bins are, you know, basically just modern comics.
Exactly.
You know, just repeats of the same issues that of, you know, I don't know, Fantastic Four that they couldn't sell off.
Right, of course, yeah.
But what you have here is an incredibly eclectic dollar bin section.
Yes.
There are some modern comics in there, but there are also Grendel comics.
Yeah.
There's lots of weird, you know, Fish Police. There's Fish Police.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. So it really does feel like it could serve any kind of comic book fan.
Yeah, I mean, that's the goal, and we really do try to, like, we have, like, some rules for it. Like, with some dollar bins, you go and you'll see, and even at some of our giant sales, some of our boxes will be very chunky, and it'll be, like you said, a lot of that same issue of Fantastic Four. But when we're stocking these, like, we have a metric where it's, like, no more than, say, 3 or 4 of the same book tops. Because we don't want people to come in and just be like, this is a long box of the same book.
Right. You gave a little tour of your back room where you sort through the collections that you buy. And you know, like, how often are you buying comics?
Every day.
Every day?
Every day. Always buying.
That's crazy.
Every day. I mean, some days nothing comes through. But we typically, you know, we are always buying. And with Third Eye Buys being open 7 days a week now, we'll be buying every single day, all 7 days a week, you know. But, you know, every day, if somebody comes our way, you know, we're buying.
And if we wanted to sell comics to you, do we just call the shop up? Do we go online?
So the best thing to do would be to go to thirdeyebuys.com. We have our rates posted up there weekly. They do update from week to week depending on how much inventory we have. So if I have a lot of inventory, which you guys saw,
it's intimidating.
My rates are low because it's the labor aspect of what we do with the collections is it's a lot of work and it's very specialized work. It's very hard to train. So the labor aspect is so the rates are low because we have so much to get through. But we do update the rates every week, and we also buy things like Funko Pops and manga and graphic novels and all of that kind of stuff.
One of the things we talked about before we were recording is like you are the specialist when it comes to going like, this is a dollar book. Like
that's me.
So what, like, can you articulate the secret of recognizing something as a dollar book?
Yeah, it's tricky. I can't articulate it well because I haven't figured out how to teach it. I've figured out how to teach most of the rest of the process, but the dollar book thing it's like a weird mix of basically just me knowing the demand from like our audience and like, you know, some people really, really like this part of X-Men and this part of X-Men, but not this part. You know, like this part of X-Force is cool and this part of X-Force is cool, but this part's not.
So I noticed in the dollar bins, you have almost all of the Liefeld New Mutants in there.
Right.
90 to 100. It's missing one issue.
Exactly.
New Mutants 98, right?
Right.
Yeah, so, you know, I would imagine that training someone to know to not put 98 in the box versus 90 through 100 is okay, is a little difficult to do.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we also, too, it's also just, like, inventory. Like, for a long time, we were not dollar box binning any New Mutants. Because even, like, the non-98s, you know, it's a cool run. It's really good.
I'd pick them up if I didn't have them already.
Right.
Yeah.
But every so often, like, we see that run a lot. So then, like, it gets to a point where you're like, you just have so many.
Right.
You're like, okay, cool, it's going to go in there.
Yeah.
Like
It makes somebody's day.
My favorite dollar bin stuff is the stuff that's so weird that if I don't buy it, it is trash.
That's my
favorite.
You know what I mean? Yeah, that's
mine
too.
Like, this is so odd that I have to... Like, the universe needs my dollar.
Yeah.
Because they showed me this book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's my favorite, too. And there's a lot of stuff like that, too, that, like, I'm like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I mean, I think honestly, too, like, part of it, like, kind of to answer your question about how to, like, kind of figure out how to sort it, it's really just kind of a matter of, like, what people are looking for now, and then add that to how much we have of that type of thing, and then it kind of moves out that way. But the thing that's cool for me about it is the books you're talking about, because, like, that's how I got really into comics. Like, I would go to the comic shop, and, you know, I started going to the comic shop because of X-Men, but I would hit the dollar bin, or at that time, it was the 3 for $1 bin. Mm-hmm. And, like, there'd be, like, random issues of things like 8 Ball in there.
Yeah.
And I would buy that, and I was like, what is this? And then, like, I get home, I'm, like, an 8th grader, and my brain is just blown by, like, this amazing comic that I paid 30 cents for or whatever.
Yeah. Brad and I talk about, like, trying to, like, recapture what it was like to experience any medium, movies, comics, TV, like, as a child.
Yeah.
Where you go, like, you pick up a book and you go, like, well, it's got to be good because it's a comic.
Right.
And then you read it with this, like, open mind of, like, this is, I mowed the lawn to get this.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
And I feel like Dollar Bin does that.
Yeah.
Goes like, well, it was only $1, so it's
exactly
gotta be good.
But I put myself in Steve's position of determining what's a dollar book and what's not a dollar book,
right.
And I have this weird thing, this like sort of like weird righteousness that will pop up where I go, "What's this doing in a dollar book?"
Oh, brother,
Maggie
trust
the Mechanic comic in a dollar book. I don't know. I'm mad.
Yeah.
But now I'll buy it. But so my question would be, are there moments where you're like, I know this is a dollar book because I know there's not like a huge audience for this, but it kind of hurts to put it in the
all the time. Mm-hmm. All the time. Oh my God. Like you have no idea. Like almost everything I love ends up in those bins because like I like a lot of indie stuff, and a lot of the indie stuff doesn't have a huge secondary market demand because there's no MCU for indie comics, but at the same time, like also sometimes it's just an accident, and that's kind of the joy of the dollar bin is like I've got 3 or 4 sets of hands downstairs on the collections, and there's a pass, and even when it gets to me, I mean sometimes I've got 20, I think I had 20 boxes to go through in one day last week, and I'm just like boom, 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 boom. And I mean, maybe it's just one of those rare days where Steve's in a hurry, and like you get a great, you know what I mean?
And suddenly there's an amazing fantasy 15 in there.
Exactly, and that's kind of the fun, I mean, like that's. In fact, we're gonna probably do this cool thing, which I haven't. This will be if people like what we're doing downstairs. This will be like phase 2. Mm-hmm. We're gonna do this thing called skeleton keys, and basically, I've got these key issues that I just always see, and like I always end up with more of them than I need, and they're great keys, but I just have a lot of them. You know what I mean? Like the second appearance of Deadpool is one of those kinds of keys, and I think we're gonna just kind of like hide those in the dollar bin.
This is genius.
That
idea. Yeah,
that is how you get me back in this store every week.
Yeah,
looking for skeleton keys.
Yeah, I think that's what we're gonna do. So that'll be phase 2 if this goes over well. I got and I guess I want to figure out how to add one more cool thing to it.
Put a golden ticket in it.
Yeah, well, that's what I was thinking, like some kind of cool thing.
Like, you found a key. Like,
yeah. Or like a key that like unlocks like a discount on like a wall book. Or, like...
Well, one of the things I like about Third Eye Comics at the main shop, and there's some of that downstairs too in this store, you'll bag and board it, and then you'll put like a little sticker on it that says like, this is why this issue is rad.
Yeah.
It's the first appearance of X. And, and then you're like, oh, this is the first time that this artist worked on this book? Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I think that's one of the cool things about Third Eye is like this idea of accessibility. Like, you feel like, even if you've never read a comic before, you can walk into a Third Eye store. There'll be someone there to help you. There's everything you need to look like you know what you're talking about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
like,
that's
just
awesome.
Really
question
sweet.
You hear all the time, and we hosted Superman 1 and 2 back to back at the Alamo Draft House the other day.
That's so cool.
And we came out of it, and people are suddenly curious about Superman comics, and they go, "Well, where should I start with Superman comics?" And it's such a daunting question,
It
right?
is, yeah.
And so it's a question that. I haven't asked the Superman question, but I've asked similar questions to your folks at the Third Eye shop. And you'll get answers at Third Eye that you won't get at other places. They're not as intimidated by that question.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
and
man.
for me, it was like Morrison. I think it was
All Stars where I'd put people.
Well, so I had read All Star and I'd read Animal Man.
Yeah.
And then somebody just started. Actually, they put Zenith in my hand.
Nice. Okay. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Okay.
And that's how I first read Zenith.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, we love those kind of questions. We love when people are like, "Where do I go with this? Where do I do this?" And like, that's the best.
Because isn't that sort of like the fallacy of people being intimidated by comics? Is it's so big.
Yeah.
I don't even start because
I don't even know where to start. Yeah.
I don't even know where to start. But the truth is, there's actually lots of places to start.
They're always trying to get you to start.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, and you just want to send people out with like the most exciting thing, and you want to be like, cool, like this is, I mean, that's the thing that we always kind of, when we bring people into Third Eye, like when we're training people and stuff, is like, we always tell everybody right from jump, we're like, you don't have to know a million things about comics. All you have to do is just be a good listener and find out why that person likes the things they like, and then match them up to things that they're going to like. So like the starter Superman story for one person might not be the same starter Superman person for another story. You know what I mean? Someone might come in and say, I really liked Smallville. Where should I start? I'd give them Earth 1.
Yeah.
Someone might say, hey, I just really want to read like something that really embodies like Superman in that kind of timeless sense. I give them All Star.
Yeah.
And like, you got to really kind of like listen to that customer.
Yeah. So I would imagine though, at this store, at Buys and Bargains, that sort of hand selling would be a little bit different than at your other shops.
Yeah, because it's so like anything goes down there. So we don't even know what the stock is. You know what I mean? Like we've got like somebody was in here and they were asking me, they were like, do you have any of that? And I'm like, I have no idea. I'm like, maybe. But like, no, I mean, like we know the stock down there and we know it when you find it, but it's kind of that thrill of the hunt, the needle in a haystack. But the relationship that the staff here, it's much more of kind of like I'm going to come into the shop, I'm going to dig, it'll be friendly service, but my people here are going to be like, they're going to be more paying attention to like, oh, that's Brad who really likes Maggie the mechanic. Hey, Brad, I got some Locust issues. You know what I mean? I got some, or one of the spinoffs from, one of the solo books by one of the two brothers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're going to see, is you're going to see that kind of like a little bit more like of a relationship based kind of like service. Yeah, exactly. And we can do that down here because it's a little bit of a slower pace. And we do that pretty darn well at the big store too. But because there's a lot more staff and there's a lot more people, it's harder for us to always remember, like, it takes us a couple more visits to remember, like, okay, cool, this person got this last time. Let me get them this, Now, we do it after a couple visits. Trish is really good at it. And Amy is really good at it. But down here, it's going to be much more kind of like, what are you collecting? What are you following? Oh, you want to fill some holes in your run? I just put a bunch of those in the bin.
Yeah. I would imagine that when you start getting lots and lots of return business of the same sort of addicts, that you'll be able to like just weed through what you have and supply them with some quality stuff.
Yeah, I like that because then I can buy more stuff.
Yeah. You're constantly like looking for more space too.
No, 100%. I mean, that's the thing. We are constantly trying to figure out ways to just store more stuff, and this isn't even the warehouse for like our fixtures and stuff. I mean, I collect fixtures almost as much as I collect comics.
One of my favorite things that you said today was that you nerd out over receipts.
Yeah.
The types of receipts that you used to see from shops.
No, I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab something.
Yeah,
cool
please do.
Yeah. So this is a kind of a neat little thing that
amazing.
I found. Yeah, this is it. So this is the Big Planet Orbit.
Whoa!
So that's a newsletter that they used to do back in the day. And that was in a collection that we were processing. And I kept it because I thought it was really cool.
I miss this because Big Planet was my first shop when we moved out to Reston.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Isn't that great? That's so dope.
Yeah, so look at that. And Harlan Ellison receives the 1998 Defender of Liberty Award.
Yeah.
All right. Wow.
Yeah,
I have not seen one of those in
that's the kind
20
of stuff.
years.
When collections come through, that's what my guys like downstairs, like when they're processing, like that's what they, you know, like one of them will come up and they'll just be like, hey, I found this, and it'll be like a comic shop's newsletter or like their catalog. I have so many catalogs. Yeah. And like just stuff like that. I love it. It's so much fun.
Man.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like I didn't even realize that they were gone until this moment. But they used to be like in every bag you would have an Orbit. And I don't know when they stopped. But it was while I was shopping there.
That's so cool.
Wild.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's and like receipts and stuff. That's my thing.
That stuff is so cool.
Yeah.
I love finding books that somebody signed to another person. Like, Dear Bob, glad the surgery went well. Enjoy. You know, like I love that.
That's
stuff.
the best.
We found a
so
Commandy issue downstairs that was signed to Joe, or it was Joe's.
It was Joe's
copy.
comic.
Yeah,
it was clearly Joe didn't want to
Joe's issue
We
Commandy.
love that.
I love that.
That's so good.
That is not downgraded in value. That is
For us, that is
upgraded.
upgraded.
Yeah.
Whenever you get something signed, we're like, to Brad and Lisa.
That's awesome.
So, you know, by the time this conversation comes out, the shop will be open. We're recording this conversation before anyone else has had like a time to like jump in there.
The good shit.
We left plenty of good shit.
There's no books we haven't touched.
There's lots of good comics we left
Fingerprints are
behind.
everywhere.
No, we need a couple $1 million to completely take everything. But you know, just from like store hours wise, does the store hours match what you've got at the other shops?
So it's a little more limited than what we have at Annapolis. Annapolis has crazy hours. Annapolis, our big stores have like long hours. They're open Monday through Saturday, 11 to 9, and then Sundays 11 to 6.
Okay.
This store will be Monday through Saturday, 11 to 7, and then Sundays 11 to 5. And then if we see a level of demand where like people are coming up right up at 7 and like we're like having to like, you know, stay till 7:30, 8 o'clock, then we'll make them longer hours. Yeah.
You know, I'm excited to see how the store does because it's something that I would like to see sweep the nation. I would like buys and bargain shops all over this country.
Me too.
Certainly up in our neck of the woods. Is there like a nerve that it, like a sense of anxiety that it won't really connect?
For me, I mean, like I think that about everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always nervous, like about like everything, like you know what I mean, like because like I never know, like I come up with like ideas for stuff, and like I don't know until I do it. And we've done stuff before that like didn't work, and we just quietly were like, all right, you know, it's over here. But this one here isn't really like it's not like a costly risk for us because we already had the storefront finished out for Third Eye Buys. We were just buying stuff, and that was it.
Right, so you're using the space already.
We're already using it, yeah. And like our company offices, you know, all that lives up here. So like, you know, like we got to pay for this, and then the storage, we need that for the collections, and it kind of feeds the other stores. So there's not like a big downside if it doesn't work. But at the same time, I still like to think like there is because I want it to really work.
Yeah.
But
yeah. All right. Lisa, do you want to go through some of the books that we found and just brag?
Our finds, our solid finds.
I'm excited.
And I also grabbed some half price trades as well.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
so we have a lot of those.
Where do you want to start? Do you want to start with trades? Do you want to start with single issues, Lisa?
I'll start with a trade. I found Katie Skelly's Nurse that I've never read, and I'm excited to check out. It's like that really satisfying, like digest size, and I love Katie Skelly. So
yeah,
I like her art a lot.
So good. So I'm not as fancy as you.
Yeah.
Okay. The thing that I was probably the most excited about when I pulled it out, and like I think I was a little gasp of excitement, just like exploded from me. But there is the Marvel Comics adaptation of RoboCop 2,
right?
Which is the first comic I ever purchased, along with G.I. Joe 103. And at some point, I got rid of it. And I'm not, you know, thankfully my parents didn't sell my comics or make me get rid of the comics. But that was just a book that never found its way into the long boxes.
Yeah.
And so to finally like recover it.
Yeah.
like this could be my copy. I don't know. So I'm very excited to read that tonight.
That's awesome.
Yay. I also found, this is the other trade, the Moving Pictures by Catherine and Stuart Immonen.
Yeah,
that's
creative
cool.
couple.
Yeah.
They're cool.
Yeah.
I also got some trash, though. Do you want to hear about my trash?
Yeah, of course I would. That's most of the stuff that I got was trash.
Yeah, we got piles.
What people would call trash, I would call treasure.
Yeah, I found from Adventure Comics, I guess, Deathhawk #1. So
nice.
it's got this guy. He's got a machine gun in one hand. And I don't know my guns very well, but another
It's
cool
a pistol of some kind. He's got a lot of grenades on his belt.
Yeah, but what really drew me in was this little sluggy alien one-eyed
Oh, yeah,
alien
that's
creature
great.
on his shoulders. And
It's
I was
a Dave Dorman painted cover, the guy who did Star Wars,
The
Dark
Dark
Empire, and all that
Yeah.
stuff.
and then
We'll talk about that second
But then
issue,
the second
so.
issue, there is a naked woman who is being attacked by a many-needled robot guy.
Yeah.
And I said, I am intrigued.
And those robot arms are placed perfectly, is not to scandalize anyone.
Yeah, that's right. Like, does she have nipples? We'll never know.
We'll never know.
I'll have to read it.
Let's see. Okay, you went trashy. What's the trashiest thing that I picked up? I don't know if I got anything that trashy.
not that you want to share with the class.
Another one that I was really excited about, Richard Corbin, who can be trashy sometimes, but in
Love
a
Richard
tasteful
Corbin.
way.
Yeah.
Found the first 2 issues of Vic and Blood, The Chronicles of a Boy and His Dog, which is an
that's
adaptation
cool.
of Harlan Ellison's novella. I have that trade paperback somewhere, but I've never had the single issues.
Yeah.
So to finally have those in the collection is really, really exciting.
We like to have multiple copies of the things we love in every format.
Yeah.
I am the same way.
Yeah.
I am the same way.
There was some other Richard Corbin
Sometimes I
stuff,
forget I bought
too.
one.
Oh, yeah, no, we do that too.
We do that a lot.
Yeah.
We do that a lot. What else you got, Lisa?
I got the Adventures of Superman, the one where he's making out with this chick sitting on top of Lois Lane's grave.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite covers.
Annual 1991.
I think
That's awesome.
Louise Simonson's
Yes,
the writer on that.
yes.
Yeah, so that's always so good. What's something else? Well, we've been buying Boris the Bear recently at cons, and so
We started
picked up
with the
some,
Punisher one.
Oh, yeah.
Like homage covers are something that I'm like a sucker for. Especially with like a comic like Boris the Bear, where it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Doing an homage of Flash of Two Worlds.
Yeah.
There's a Dark Horse Presents Flash of Two Worlds that we saw recently that was like 2 predators from different dimensions,
Right.
racing to kill a human.
Yeah, there's always wild ones too, like Destroyer Duck. Like there was a Frank Miller cover I saw,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Wow!" I was like, "Frank Miller, just Destroyer Duck, holy whoa!"
So, speaking of Frank Miller, there is a cover that he did for Amazing Heroes magazine, which was kind of like a pre-Wizard, a pro-Wizard, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little classier than Wizard was. Like not quite the Comics Journal, but definitely not Wizard. And Frank Miller did a cover for his interview, and it's Frank Miller illustrating Batman, The Dark Knight, and Elektra about to clash around an alley
that's so
corner.
cool.
Really cool cover. So I had to pick that up.
Yeah. My thing that I'm really excited that I found, I've started collecting Angel Love. And Angel Love is like a romance comic, like a high melodrama type of like, she's dating her girlfriend, she's pregnant, like that kind of thing. And so I found Angel Love in the stacks, and I'm so excited. Barbara Slate. Oh, this is number 5. So by starting collecting, I have 3, 4, and now 5.
When I saw that one in your stack, I was like, Angel Love, because like every time I pull that one out, I'm like, this looks so cool.
It is
like,
really cool, and she's a cartoonist, and she has a little. She has this little angel that she draws when she needs a guardian angel, and then it comes alive and talks to her and stuff.
I've also been collecting movie adaptations, comic book movie adaptations, and so I picked up an adaptation of the Nick Nolte movie The Deep that Marvel Comics put out.
Man,
And I picked up a Dark Horse Comics adaptation of Predator 2, or at least part 1 of 2.
There's a really dope Dr. Giggles Predator Dark Horse.
Yeah, I'm on the hunt for that. And then I picked up Talent Showcase, or DC Talent Showcase number 19, because it features the first comics work of Darwin Cook, who is my favorite cartoonist, probably.
Yeah.
Lots of good stuff.
Yeah. I think, we walked away with like $80-something comics.
If we kept on going through this entire stack here, we would be here till the sun went down. Actually, I think the sun is going down.
It was about a short box worth. You guys got some good stuff.
Yeah. So thank you for letting us take the first nab at those boxes.
Yeah.
Because Tom King was here earlier today.
I apologize. He was nerding out too. He was
what
like,
did he get?
He got a bunch of 90s DC stuff.
Oh, that's fun.
I think he got like some Armageddon, and like he got there was something else, Checkmate. He was like Checkmate, and I'm like Tom, I've never heard anyone this excited for Checkmate.
Amazing.
And then he was like, I really gotta go.
So this episode, Free Comic Book Day, has happened. It's over. It's in our past now.
Yeah.
It's in our future as we're talking, but as this episode is out, it's in the past. And I understand that you announced something pretty cool at Free Comic Book Day.
Yes, yeah. So Free Comic Day, we're going to be letting everybody know about Third Eye Music and Video.
What?
Third Eye
Music and Video.
That's right. Yeah, we so the two Annapolis stores, we've got the game store and the comic store, and they're both massive, full of cool stuff. And then we have this space in the middle that's going to be coming up vacant very soon. And we are going to be putting a giant, awesome record and movie store in there. And it's going to be super cool.
So it's basically transforming that whole block into a Third Eye Comics superstore.
That's, yeah. I'm excited.
Talk about like your one-stop shop.
Yeah.
Like, you get your movies, you get your vinyl, you get your comics, you get your games.
You walk a block.
You get comics.
Like, going to Third Eye will now be a day event for the Gullicksons.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
You're going to have to open a restaurant.
You know.
You're going to have to pack a lunch.
Like a Third Eye coffee shop, a Third Eye bar.
I'm waiting on those vacancies.
Yeah. If there was a coffee shop, I would never leave.
Yeah.
Caffeinated, scrounging through dollar bins.
Third Eye Comics Hotel.
Oh, there you go.
Well, I joke with everybody. I'm like, with recreational on the way, maybe we'll have Third Eye Buds at the end.
Very nice.
Oh, man. I freaking love that.
But no, it's going to be cool. We started carrying records and movies in the game store during COVID because we had half a store that we couldn't do anything with because we had to shut our play space down. And it actually ended up being one of the best things for us because those two categories. Number one, I just like that stuff. Anything we start at Third Eye that we like try, it's always something that like we're like, okay, cool. We think people will like it. But also, like, we think it's cool. And, like, we'll start small, and sometimes stuff works and sometimes it doesn't. And the records took off. And I'm a big music person, too. So I was like, oh, this is great. And then I was like, maybe we'll try movies. And I'm a big movie person. And then the movies really surprised me. I was not expecting that. And, like...
Yeah, physical media.
Yeah.
It's a thing.
Where's that?
And Netflix just announced that they're going to mailing their last DVD. I actually still subscribe to this.
Do you?
I do. I got the three out at a time plan.
I think we have 2 envelopes that we've just never returned.
Don't talk
Yeah.
Should we leave that out?
I literally just mailed back Lamberto Bava's Demons, and then I'm going to watch Pecker tonight, the John Waters movie. Yeah.
All right. Awesome.
But with that their last DVD mails out in September, and like the thing that people like I think are starting to realize, and why I think we're seeing sales on video. I mean, records obviously those have been doing well for a little bit, but video I think is coming back because with the streaming services, you either have to have like 14 subscriptions to watch whatever you want to watch. And it actually ends up being more than if you just go out and buy 1 or 2 movies a month. Or like licensed stuff. Like I was talking to somebody about John Woo and I was like, you've never seen A Better Tomorrow? We're gonna watch that shit right now.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's nowhere to be found.
Yeah.
A lot of that John Woo stuff, the Hong Kong stuff,
Yeah.
very hard to find streaming, even to rent.
Yeah, you can't. You can't find it anywhere. And like I was like, but like I had the box set, and I'm like, we're gonna watch this.
Yeah.
But the other thing too is I think that with like DVDs, and I know that for me, like when I rent, like when I do the mail away, I will finish a movie and I'll enjoy it more. Whereas with like the streaming stuff, I find that like I'm looking for the next best thing. I'm like, oh, I want to watch this. Nah, I don't want to watch this.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's in the DVD player, I'm invested.
You've committed.
It's committed. Yeah.
We definitely believe in that.
Yeah.
We're big physical media people to the point where I'm afraid we live on the third floor. I'm afraid from the weight of our physical media, we're slowly just going to manifest destiny the apartment below us.
You know, it wouldn't be that bad if they let us have that space then.
There you go.
Oh, man. Steve, before we go, I always want to put you on the spot about what you're excited about right now in comics.
Yeah,
like,
sure.
What's going on in the comic book world that you are just in love with? Yeah.
Okay. So so much. I'm always pumped, and like right now, so like if I had to look and say like just like in the realm of like Rock'em Sock'em Big Two comics, I'm really excited about DC this year. DC is like the Night Terror stuff. It's like Freddy Krueger versus the DC universe. It looks awesome. All the new DC #1s like have been great. Like Josh Williamson's Superman was phenomenal. Doom Patrol was so dope. I read an advance of the Green Arrow that's coming out this week, and it's the best Green Arrow I've read probably since like the Kevin Smith stuff.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, like it's really good.
Which, by the way, is in the dollar bins right now.
I know. That's one of those ones where I'm like, this is criminal. But I really am excited for DC. Like I really think that this is going to be a year where like they're going to surprise everybody, and like by the time we get to the end of the summer, they're going to be like, that's where the good superhero comics are going to be.
Yeah, not to pick like favorites, but I do feel like DC has been, in the superhero Big Two world for a little while has been killing it.
They have, and like the comics like have been like they've really put an emphasis on strong creative.
Yes,
and like I feel like they've kind of like figured out how to coalesce that around like a direction now, which makes it easier to market that out and get it to people. And I think I think they're going to hit big. Then in terms of just other stuff, I really am excited about James Tynion's World Tree. Like I got a chance to read an advance of that, and it'll be out this week. And then we have him coming in on May 13th for the signing. But I really liked it. Like I thought it was just a great read. It's like this 90s nostalgia for like analog internet, like mixed with the horror aspect, and it's just really cool. And oh man, there's so much. Those are some of the big. I'd say that's like kind of like my big stuff. Like I'm really Indigo Children. That was phenomenal
by our buddy Kurt Pyers.
Yeah, that was great. That was super good. Like I really liked that too.
He's coming for a signing, right?
Yeah, May 27th, Saturday, May 27th. Yeah. And then I'm like stoked about manga. Like there's so much good manga out there. I don't know. I mean, like this, it's going to be a great year for comics. Like I'm seeing, people are, we had a strong period of time for comics where, things were very much like succeeding solely on like a speculator kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like while that can be good for business, it's just not as much fun.
Right.
Like that's not my wheelhouse. Like I grew up reading comics in the late 90s. And, like, there wasn't really a speculative market in the late 90s. There wasn't a market in the late 90s, It was a creator-driven market. And I feel like we're going back into one of those periods where it's going to be content-focused. Like, that seems to be... I think so.
I hope so.
That seems to be where we're heading.
Yeah, because I'm still going to read them.
Yeah. Well, that's what I love. Like, it breaks my heart when, like, you're talking to somebody and, like... You're like, this person does not read a single comic, but they have a stack. But for each their own. Everybody's got their own thing, and I appreciate it. But like, I want to just tell people why this comic kicks ass.
It's hard to relate to.
Yeah.
At the same time, if I want to buy a really nice slab comic, I can also find those at Third Eye Comics.
That's right. We do have those.
For everyone.
Yeah. Like part of me I just recoil at a slabbed book. Like it just like makes me feel like, oh no.
Yeah.
But I have to say to myself like, okay, it's just like that's not me.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Oh, I was just about
Exactly.
to tell a scandal story.
I'm just excited to see like kind of like a return to like
Yeah.
more like collecting is great. I love collecting, but I want people to collect something they love.
Yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that's where I think we're getting back to.
Yeah. And as we say, like practically on every episode, it's like no better time to be reading comics than right now.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it's the best time. I mean, like it's like I remember like when we first opened, like we opened in 2008, and even then, like I didn't have the variety of stuff I've got to show to people. Like I didn't have like. I got like a bomb-ass young adult section, you know? Like, I got this, like, crazy plethora of all this first-second stuff that's phenomenal and, like, all this really good stuff.
We love First Second.
They're great. And, like, that wasn't around when I opened, you know? Like, I remember, like, it was like someone would come in and they're like, you got any cool nonfiction stuff? And I'm like, it's all kind of depressing, but I do. But now I got everything, you know?
Man. Well, congratulations on getting this store open. Congratulations on expanding the empire with a mega store.
Thank you.
We will be there on grand opening day, whenever that is.
Thank you.
You don't have a date yet when that would happen.
I actually I have a date and I have something for you guys. If I can find them. A pass for preview night, which will be, I believe, what's the date on that?
August 18th, Brad's birthday.
Is that your
My
birthday?
So
there you
I
go.
will be here for my
Preview night.
birthday.
There you go.
Yeah.
Fun.
Yeah.
That is the best birthday gift.
Yes.
So that's our like sneak peek, and that'll be like
I'll put it
basically just a handful of people that have the passes, and then we open grand opening will be the following day.
That's also when Blue Beetle comes out.
That's
So
right.
there you go.
What a great day.
What
Hell yeah.
synergy. Yeah. So, one last thing, Steve. You know, people hopefully have looked at the show notes and seen all the links that I put into the show notes. But sometimes they don't look at them. So, in case people want to get up to date on everything you got going, so many signings, so they should be visiting your site
No doubt.
regularly. Where can they find you online?
So the best place to find us is thirdeyecomics.com. You can follow us on Instagram at Third Eye Comics, Twitter at Third Eye Comics, Facebook at Third Eye Comics, TikTok at Third Eye Comics, but thirdeyecomics.com will take you to all of those places. And if you're not local to one of our stores, you can order online from us at thirdeyecomics.com as well. We ship worldwide.
One final, thank you to Third Eye Comics. But during lockdown, I had discovered Usagi Yojimbo. I had made the commitment to read all of Usagi Yojimbo, and you guys provided and you shipped this giant box of books to me.
That's
and
awesome.
We devoured them.
Yes.
So thank you.
Well,
for
thank
that.
you for ordering
Of
them.
course.
Yeah.
Of course. All right, Steve. Thank you. How do we
And
sign out on this, Lisa?
We'll sign out later in our outro.
Oh,
we
yeah,
usually
that's
do.
right.
Generally, we just stop.
Again, huge thanks to Steve from Third Eye Comics for inviting us to his new store and letting us rummage around, giving us money to rummage around. That was so incredible.
And I love his entire philosophy about being a proprietor of the comics medium and that idea of like, hey, there are no walls up. You can walk into my store, know nothing, and feel welcome. I think that's beautiful.
And I think it's essential for the growth of the medium, too. You need more places like Third Eye Comics. And how about that announcement?
Yeah.
Third Eye Comics is going to become this mega store in Annapolis, Maryland. It's going to be this cultural hub. If you're in the DMV area, it's well worth the drive. It takes us about an hour and 20 minutes, depending on traffic, usually longer, to get to Third Eye Comics. But we never regret that time in the car.
Yeah, that place is a worthwhile destination.
Now we got to move into part 2 of our free comic book day special, our chat with Jesse Lonergan talking about Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea. But before we can even do that, we got to do some words of affirmation.
Affirmations.
So usually we hold these words of affirmation portions for our counseling session episodes, but Lisa and I were having a conversation, and that conversation resulted in why? Why do we do that? No, every episode we should bring in some words of affirmation. This is our opportunity to thank our new and upgrading Patreon subscribers. Without their support, we cannot do what we do. They really do provide gas money to go to Annapolis, Maryland
Yeah.
to do shows like this, equipment upgrades, plane tickets to conventions. We just got our press application approved for San Diego Comic-Con, and without our patrons, we would not be able to go to as many cons and report on them as we do. So we owe them tremendous thanks, and the way that we give those thanks, we provide a little words of affirmation on each and every episode going forward.
Ooh.
Of course, we don't expect all of our listeners to become patrons. There are many ways that you can support Comic Book Couples Counseling. A 5-star review on Apple Podcasts does wonders. Sharing these episodes with your friends, family, and strangers does wonders, and we appreciate you as well. And guess what? You can actually use these affirmations that are dedicated to our patrons for yourself, which is what Lisa and I do.
Yeah, we curate and use affirmations, and we're more than happy to pass them on to you. These quotes are all attributed to Bill Watterson, one of my all-time faves, according to the internet. I have not properly sourced these, but I do think they're great.
Let's do it.
Let us take a deep and cleansing breath as we clear our minds. Jeremy Gooch. Weekends don't count unless you spend them doing something completely pointless.
Cody, if you can find even one person you really like, you're lucky. And if that person can also stand you, you're really lucky.
JJ. We're so busy watching out for what's ahead of us that we don't take time to enjoy where we are.
Yeah, those are fantastic. I really need to read more Calvin and Hobbes. I didn't grow up on it like you did, but I have become curious because of your fandom.
Like, what I like about Calvin and Hobbes is that it has kind of a thorny optimism. Like, Calvin is such a crab, but generally, like, the message is enjoy your life.
We have to cover Calvin and Hobbes in a counseling session at some point, right?
I think so.
Yeah. Let's make a note of that. So there you are. That's our words of affirmation portion. Thank you to all our lovely patrons for giving what you give. It means the world to us. So yes, Jesse Lonergan talking about Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea. The first issue comes out from Dark Horse Comics on May 17th. It is part of the Hellboy universe. Hyperborea has been explored several times before, but not quite like this. And definitely not with Jesse Lonergan doing the heavy lifting with his incredible artwork.
Yeah, isn't this like a match made in heaven?
It really is. If you've checked out books like Planet Paradise or Faster, there is this kinetic energy that Jesse Lonergan brings to all of his stories. And he has a similar philosophy regarding inserts that Mignola shares. And I love to see how Lonergan updated that style for Miss Truesdale. And we definitely talk about that in this conversation.
So just to give you a basic plot synopsis as context for this conversation, Miss Truesdale is part of the Heliopic Brotherhood of Ra. And she's kind of like she's like a low member. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Doesn't hold a lot of power within the Brotherhood because it is a Brotherhood and they're a bunch of misogynistic jerkwads.
Exactly. But the leader is this woman, and Miss Truesdale goes to see her, and they share a vision of the past where we find out that Miss Truesdale might be more powerful and more key to the overall Brotherhood than previously assumed.
Yeah, and like all trips to the Hyperborean age in the Hellboy universe, you know, there's a lot of love being thrown around for Robert E. Howard-like characters. So if you like Conan the Barbarian, Red Sonja, this is where Mike Mignola gets those kinks out. And this time with the help of Jesse Lonergan, who again has just such a unique style that pairs so well with Mike Mignola's pacing.
My introduction to Jesse Lonergan was Hedra, which I mispronounced in this interview, and I'm forever setting myself on fire for that. But how could I have known? I learned the word from reading. And it's a fake word. I'm going down a rabbit hole of shame. But Hedra is all pacing because it's a wordless comic. And I'm not a wordless comic type of person. I'm
you
very
usually
words.
resist them.
But I loved it so much. It's like a space journey. If you haven't read any Jesse Lonergan, Hydra is a perfect place to start because it really hyper-focused on his specific superpowers.
And you can read it digitally, but we would recommend seeking out the magazine-sized version that Image Comics put out.
Yes.
Because you want to lay that thing flat.
Spacing is everything in his comics. It's about the amount of space.
So with our recommendations out of the way and the setup of the plot, here's our conversation with Jesse Lonergan talking about Ms. Truesdale and the fall of Hyperborea. Jesse, welcome to Comic Book Couples Counseling. Hello.
Hello. Good to be here.
We are super excited to have you here.
We're huge fans.
We've been massive fans of your work for a long time. I think the first comic we ever read of yours was Hedra.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
That's a definitely yes for me.
Yeah. And that feels like a calling card comic. You could slap that on someone's desk and be like, check out this guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I feel that's a lot of people's first experience dealing with me is that comic. So yeah, I definitely feel like it's the one people know me for.
And so for us, when we then heard that you were working for the Mignola-verse, which is one of the first comics that Lisa and I kind of bonded over, all the Hellboy stuff, Mike Mignola, that felt like, I don't know, that was just like such a glorious announcement. We were so excited.
So right.
Yeah, it seems so right.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like Mike Mignola has been a big, I don't know how visible it is, but like a big influence, and also has just had this career and this body of work that's just, I don't know if anyone else like active like compares really. Like
it's interesting that you say like, oh, I don't know if people could tell. Lisa and I were debating it just before we got on the mic with you. If you look at Hedra and Drome and Faster, I feel like there is a Mignola influence there with your paneling.
I see it in the use of the void.
Yeah.
Like the use of blank space creating time.
Right. Yeah. That's definitely one of the things is like, I feel like people seem to look at this sort of, I don't know how to describe it, are like monolithic sort of figures and these sort of like perfectly sort of structured panels, but then the composition inside the panel, but then also the way he does panels, I feel like sort of like realizing like, well, you can just have a red block and like that's all you need, or you don't necessarily have to have the panels like going in sequence. Like, you can have like this like aspects of a scene within the panels.
I often think about his work in terms of inserts. Mm-hmm. He was the first artist that I felt like he used like an insert the way that a movie would. Like you'd be reading an action scene in, I don't know, like the chain coffin, and then there would be just a panel of a bird.
Yeah, I feel like it's this weird thing of like, it seems like in movies and like video and whatever, we're very used to just having like something interjected into a sequence, but within comics it feels kind of rare to see that, and I think he does it especially well, and it's sort of that was like one of like his big influences on me was sort of like thinking about it sort of like non sort of linear. It doesn't have to be going in chronological order, but also it can just be one panel. Like
right,
it doesn't need to be like a scene in the present and a scene in the past. It could be like, no, this one panel is from a different time, and it can work. Which is, I guess always the fear is like, does this work? Does this make sense?
So then with that admiration in mind, what was the emotional experience when you get that phone call and you've been invited into the Mignola-verse?
Yeah. Well, it was a Facebook message. And it was like, is this real? Like, wait, what? Is this how things happen? So it was kind of just like shock of Mike Mignola. One, like knowing who I was at all, and then like also liking what I do. And so it was kind of like this, he just like wrote me sort of kind of out of the blue, being like, "Do you want to do something in the Hellboy universe?" Which I was like, "Yeah." do people say no? I don't like. And then like we met in New York and like we're chatting, and I realized like he was like pretty definite that he wanted me to do it. Like I didn't have to like do anything other than what I've already done to like prove to him, which that's
like,
what I
no
thought.
pitch.
I was like, oh, I need to convince him that I can do this. And I realized like during our conversation, I was like, oh, he thinks I can. It's like, so that was, I don't know, that was like kind of intimidating meeting him and stuff. And then like realizing like, oh, we're just going to do this. And so it's been, I don't know, a little hard to believe. Like it was something I kind of doubted, I think, up until I started drawing like finished pages. Even though I'd like signed the contract and stuff, I was like, this is probably not going to happen. But yeah, and I think I just finished colors on the fourth and final issue.
So it's happened.
It's happened. I think it's going to come out. Yeah. But yeah, so it was a lot of shock.
I love that. I love the idea of going like, oh, my hero, they believe in me.
Yeah,
how wonderful.
Yeah, it's like intimidating, because like his work is, I just hold in such high regard, and then like to be doing work and sending it to him to be judged, it's like so nervous and like, oh, what is he gonna say? And then but then also like reading the scripts and like one of them in the first issue, there's like page 5, the fight continues. It's like, okay, I guess he trusts me to do this. So it's like a intimidating yet also a confidence boost at the same time.
In the press, Mignola talks about his love for you, using that 4-letter word, using love, being specifically about your pacing. And you talk about how like your pacing is influenced by him, but also like he must see something else in there. Like, do you feel like you have a secret to your like signature Jesse Lonergan pacing?
People talk a lot about like pacing and like time and stuff like that, and it's not. I do draw a lot, like, and I draw in comic book form. Like when I'm working on my own stuff, that's how I write. Is I just draw comics. And so I think it's maybe gotten to this point where it's like, so this is just how I'm thinking, on paper, and this is how I'm breaking it up. But I'm not like thinking about it. It's just like this is how it works, and this is where the next thing should be. This is the movement that follows this movement. This is the gap that needs to happen, or something like that.
Yeah, there's just like a fluency to it.
Yeah, and I guess also to some extent, I feel like I don't think time exists really in comics. Like, you're going to read the comic at whatever speed you're going to read it at, and I can't really do that much to control you. Like in a movie, they can be like, no, this shot's 5 seconds. And you're going to sit there for the entirety of those 5 seconds. I mean, I suppose you could watch it on high speed or whatever. Well, we don't really have that in comics. And so a lot of things like I feel like I probably, when I was beginning, I'd be like, oh, this is like a slow thing, so I'll draw this thing 3 times. And it's like, I don't think that actually creates a slowness. I mean, maybe it tells the reader a slowness, but it actually might speed the reader up.
Yeah.
If you draw the same thing 3 times because they saw it the first time and they got it.
Yep.
And then they look at it, it's like, oh, same thing. I don't need to look. And so it actually might create like a faster reading experience if you draw the same thing 3 times. And so like I've sort of tried to I've sort of stopped thinking in that sort of sense of like panels represent time and 2 panels is, if 1 panel is 1 second, 2 panel is 2 seconds. I don't really think that way. It's just like, no, it's about like the size of the panels, how much happens in between the panels, like those sorts of things are like the things I can control. So I feel like I just went out into like the weeds there.
No,
like
this is
how
this,
No, we
comics
love
get
the
read.
weeds.
no, this is how I love it. Okay, so I feel like as a reader, my relationship with time and comics changes as I age. And I feel like there are moments in my life where comics are a fast reading experience, and then I actually force myself to really slow down, and then I found like a happy medium, and then I'm like, no, I like reading fast, no, I like reading slow. So
Right,
like
yeah.
I feel like I'm always evolving with how I use time and comics, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. I feel like the way, I don't know. I'm always thinking about like how I read comics as well.
Yeah.
Because I think right now my sort of current way of reading is very, very slow. Like I think other people read comics like 10 times faster than I do, and I'm just like sitting there looking at it basically, and just like looking at the images and stuff, and not necessarily moving very fast. But I felt like when I was younger, I think the way I would read them is I'd read them really fast and then immediately read them again, really like and I'm going to look at the pictures more this time, like, and it was like this, like, maybe it's just that I have so many comics now. It's like, yeah, I don't really read comics with this like back and forth way I used to. And then also different comics I feel like have different reading for me.
Mhm.
Like I love like Jack Kirby Fourth World stuff, like Kamandi, or not that era of DC, not the Fourth World, but that.
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time when he's
same.
working
The 70s DC Kirby
Yeah.
is my favorite. I think it's
Yeah,
your
mine
favorite
too,
also.
mine too.
Yeah, our favorite Kirby stuff.
and with that, like, I really skim the words. Like it is.
Same.
It's really skimming. I'm not like giving it like the attention that I'll give. And like, while another comic I might be focusing mainly on the words and stuff. And so it's a kind of an interesting reading experience that it almost reminds me of like you have to like learn how to read each individual comic. Like I feel like if you give Watchmen to somebody cold, like it's like hard, like it's like dense, and it's like there's so many words, and like it's this rigid sort of grid. And I think it's like probably a hard comic for someone who doesn't read comics to come into, because they're going to have to learn how to read it. While like, I don't know, a light manga of some sort, like recently I was looking at Zom 100. Like,
I want to check that out.
it's like a comedy. It's pretty light, not serious in what I've read, but like you can fly through those pages, and it's like, yeah, I feel someone cold could just like sit in and get this pretty quickly. And it sort of reminds me of like when I was like first started reading as like a kid. Maybe it happens as an adult too, of like when you'd pick up a new book, it would feel like strange after whatever the last book you had read was.
Mhm.
Like, because the writer writes differently, like the sentences are different, and you're not really used to like the cadence or the pacing of the writing. And so it's always like hard at the beginning, but then at some point like it clicks, and all of a sudden you're like really flying through the book.
I super relate to what you were saying about like you have to kind of learn to read comics, because I didn't grow up with stapled comics. Like I read strips, like I read Sunday strips, but I didn't start reading comics until I was in college. And then in that early time of Brad and me dating, like one of like the tests, like for it felt like a test to me for like, are we going to operate as Brad hands me the Hellboy books, and I read all of them, and I don't think I absorbed one iota, just because I didn't have that kind of fluency. I had read like Watchmen, like I read stuff that was like extremely like word dense,
Yeah.
you know, And then to be handed Hellboy, like I've had to go back.
Yeah.
I remember Hellboy, my first read of Hellboy, like a fever dream. Like, okay, I remember the images and the colors, but like the literalness of it, like I just did not absorb at all.
No, like comic strips, I would say I read like were probably where I started from as well. Like, and I didn't really get into comic books until high school, probably. So a little bit earlier, but it's still, I still feel now like I feel like I'm late when you talk to these guys who are like reading X-Men when they were 9 or whatever. I don't know, maybe that's Brad.
That is 100% Brad. It is
Um,
100% Brad. And like I meet those guys at cons and stuff where they're like, I've been reading this stuff since I was 10.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I've been reading this stuff since I was 18 and I'm now 39. So I still have read comics longer
yeah,
than
it's a
you.
long time. Like, yeah. So it feels like, but I also like, I don't like necessarily think like those people who've been reading a long time have a more valid opinion, but
Right.
but they do have
Absolutely
like
not.
a different relationship
Yeah.
with it. Like, and I sort of think about it like I go back to like Batman '89, and I'm like, is it as good as I think it is? Because I was 10 years old. Like I don't think like, so I don't question any of it because I was 10 and it was perfect at that time. And so like so many things that like maybe if I saw it like cold now, I'd be like, that doesn't work. Like that doesn't work. But because I still have that 10-year-old relationship and like that affection for it, it like changes the way I view it. And so like someone who is to watch it now, like for the first time, they're not going to have like the same relationship with it. Not that their opinions are invalid at all, or mine are invalid. It's just like where we're coming from is very different.
I like to tease Brad that my opinions are more valid because they're nostalgia free.
Yeah, it's probably true that like yours are more objective. But I don't know if objective is that much. Like when we're talking about movies, it's pretty.
There's no such thing as
yeah.
Right.
Everybody's encountering every story through the filter that is them, and the quicker we get away from is an opinion valid or not valid, the more interesting the conversation you're actually going to have about a story.
Yeah,
I would love to get into Miss Truesdale a little bit, and
that's good.
I can talk about comics all day long.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm gonna make you late for stuff. No, in another interview with Multiversity Comics, you mentioned that you had that you understood Miss Truesdale immediately and you had an image of her immediately. Can we delve a little deeper into that? Like, did you find her like relatable in a way, or did you just find like, okay, I understand where she's coming from?
I think it's like a relatable thing of being like in a position where like you know, or you have ideas of what you can be and what you are capable of, but people don't see it, or aren't willing to see it. And I feel like probably most people have had that experience at some point, like,
right.
You know, and where like, you know, you're doing something and or you believe in yourself, but like you don't have that necessarily, like that support. And in culture, I feel like certain people get that more often than others, but we all get it. And so like I sort of like that was sort of like this like way I sort of felt like I could sort of feel the character and like what she looked like. It would be something that like people feel they can read and understand without actually knowing, you know. And I think that's probably also something people have experienced as well, is that people look at you and they have an idea of who you are without actually knowing you. And, you know, sometimes they might be pretty accurate, but other times not at all.
Like, that's what I love about the idea of past lives as a concept, because it solidifies like, okay, my greatness is remote because in past lives it's distant in time, but it's also innate because it's inside me already.
Right.
And then also the idea of like, I have generations worth of strangers inside me where during my time on this planet, it is my responsibility to get to know them
Right.
and continue their mission, whatever that could have been. Like, how do you feel about the concept of past lives and how it relates to the way that you think or the way that you story tell?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, in terms of actual belief, I'm not so sure.
Right.
But like,
Same.
but I do feel like I do like this idea of like there's something in your blood, that's like that's telling you something like deep and innate. Um, I like that idea, and I like that sort of like that feeling of like once you start getting into past lives, you start getting into like fate and those sorts of ideas and destiny, and I feel that leads to a lot of like narrative fun, of
Yeah.
like fighting your destiny, embracing your destiny, like all of those sort of like conflicts. Um, I find sort of compelling. Um, and I think Miss Truesdale has those things going on within it, of like who you have been, who you will be, all of those sorts of things.
Now, previous Hellboy and Mignolaverse stories have dealt with past lives, and there's been some really great characters that have explored that concept before. But just based on the first issue that we've read, it feels like we're really exploring that concept in this story, and we're expanding on that concept in a major way. And it must create a challenge to tell a past story and a present day story and it make it unified.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the interesting things in the story is that there is not just the relationship like going forward from the past, but also going backward
Yeah.
from the future, which is also Victorian England, so the past. And I think it provides for this sort of like interesting, like in terms of like visualization, like juxtaposition of like how an event in the present affects event in the past and how they correlate and connect. Um, and it's been like a fun challenge because that's sort of stuff I like doing is like how to sort of mix, like you were talking about like sort of this idea of like a cutaway or something like that, and it's sort of like doing that but like with thousands of years in between, um, and it's been a fun thing to incorporate and work with.
And you're also contributing a massive amount of information to Mignola's version of Hyperborea. Like that's also quite a bit of what's the word there? Like there is a responsibility there.
Yeah, that was sort of like one of the intimidating things, was like coming in and like this is sort of it's been glimpsed, uh and there's been some stories that have sort of featured sort of visuals of it, but like this is sort of like the first time sort of getting into it for an extended period of time. uh so yeah, that's like an exciting thing to be doing, sort of like to sort of be exploring sort of a new territory, in the Mignolaverse. um I don't know. It's like nervous, but then it's like, well, if I do it wrong, Mignola will tell me. Like it's not like I'm on my own. Like,
Right.
I send him the pages, and he can be like, oh, you got it wrong. So
How often does that happen?
not much actually. Like he's been pretty happy, I think, with what I've done. So there's been maybe like one or two panels that it's been, and it's more narrative than like representation. I think in some ways, a lot of this stuff has been laid by like artists that have come before. Um, so I feel there's a lot to work with, and I have like all the books. So they're heavily referenced as well.
So then what is the key to getting over that intimidation factor? One, Mignola gives you a call, let's do some comics together. And two, now we're doing some pretty significant comics in terms of contributing to your mythology. How do you just move beyond that? Like, okay, all right, I got to do this.
Yeah, it's just do it.
Yeah.
I just sort of feel like it's like my attitude is with comics especially is like, I'm just gonna do it, and I'm just gonna draw the page, see what happens. Even in like with my own comics, I'm like, maybe I won't like it, and I'll draw it again. And I just have this attitude of like, I'll draw it again, like if it doesn't work. And so I just sort of like sit down and do it, because for me that's sort of the intimidation and the worry and stuff that all comes when I'm not working, and when I'm working, it's it's just part of the day. Like you sit down, and like there are all these sort of things that I do that I feel sort of like get my head in the right space of like laying out the page and like taking my ruler and like this is the panel borders and stuff, and all of those things that are kind of mechanical, like you measuring with a ruler is like 9 by 14 inches, like is not thoughtful, but it is part of the process. And so it sort of gets you into that place, and then I draw, and hopefully it comes out okay. And if it doesn't, I'll do it again. Like that's kind of just my attitude.
Just the idea of like drawing something and going like, oh, just like, if you're like writing with a pencil, you go like, what's the worst that happens? I erase it. You know what I mean? Like, what is the hardest part of your job? Like, what is the thing where you're like, okay, now I feel a tremendous amount of pressure, and I hope I can do it.
Time. Like that's like what I'm saying is like, I'll redo it is relying on the fact that there is time to redo it. And so when time gets tight, that's a lot of pressure. But I feel sort of with stuff like this, where I'm working with a writer, and in this case the writer is Mike Mignola. In some ways, like my pressure is just to draw. Like I have this like great partner in terms of like, does this make sense? Does it work? It's like I have this like industry legend here who's going to check before anyone else looks at it. And so like in some ways that's sort of like no pressure, like it's just sort of like doing the best you can. And I think I've worked to a point where I'm able to be pretty good pretty consistently. Like I'm able to draw a person swinging an axe, those sorts of things. And I guess I feel more sort of like pressure on my own things where I'm also the writer, ostensibly. And that has to come out. That's where I feel the real like nerves.
So then where does a work like this sit in your headspace next to your other works? Like how do you see this relating to the rest of your body of work?
I don't know. I haven't thought about it in those terms, of like, how does it fit into my oeuvre? I feel like it's this, I guess I think of everything I do as sort of like this learning experience, and sort of part of this like process. Like it for me, like I almost feel like there are like the end products of books, but overall it's like this artistic thing I'm working on, and this way of thinking and crafting. And so it's like this opportunity to work with Mike Mignola, who's someone I respect and like think so much of their work, and to sort of get to see like a glimpse of like how his mind's working on the same sorts of things, because we're both, you know, making comics and stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't know like where it will sit, like in terms of like this book, this book, this book, this book. Like I don't know. I also don't know I don't know how that works. You know, like with like we talked about Watchmen. It's like what does Alan Moore think of Watchmen? Like where does he
Something
put
very
Watchmen
different, right?
in
Yeah.
his like list of things he's done? Because it seems like the rest of the world is like, that's the best one, and like that's
It's actually Swamp Thing.
or
Yeah.
okay, or Swamp Thing, but you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah, I do.
I don't know what he thinks about it that way, you know. So I don't know how to think about that sort of question.
Yeah.
Like if you
Terrible.
had an IMDb page for your comics, which would go in that little place where it's like, these are the 4 or 5 movies.
Yeah,
Right.
the most known.
Yeah.
Right.
But you know, like a publicist picks those, or the individual
I
picks
think it's
those.
actually the algorithm. I think it's like how
No,
many
you can pay extra. I don't
Oh,
know
yeah.
why I've researched this, but you can pay extra
on
on
IMDb.
IMDb to choose what your top movies are.
Amazing.
Okay.
But anyway, that doesn't.
So if Johnny Mnemonics and Keanu Reeves top 4, he paid to get Johnny Mnemonic in there.
Yeah. Or they're trying to troll him into paying.
Just chooses bad movies. Yeah, like I mean, like you mentioned Hydra as like a calling card book, and like it seems like people responded to that well, you know, and
Yeah.
that one had like this big impact. I don't know that like I chose that, you know, like I'm
Sure.
very happy it happened, and I've gotten a lot of opportunities because of it, but like, you know, like I think before Image picked it up, you know, it was just this book I did and self-published, you know, like, and then Image picks it up, all of a sudden a lot of people see it, it gets like this nice word of mouth buzz, and you know, but I don't know necessarily how to place that, you know.
Sure.
You
yeah.
pronounce it Hydra?
Yeah.
Oh no! A chill goes through my blood. Like, oh my god, I'm pronouncing it. You know, you read a word and then you make it up.
Yeah, well,
Hydra.
that was kind of like with it. So it comes from polyhedra, this idea of like shapes. And but part of me, like with that book, it's so designed, you know.
Yeah.
And so like in coming up with a title, it was like it needs to be 5 letters because the grid is 5 panels across, and so like, you know, it's like, which is, I don't think anybody thinks of titles like that. Like it's got to be this. I also didn't want it to be something that immediately meant something to people. Like, so like if I called it space, it's like, oh, that would ruin it. Or like sword or whatever. Like I didn't want any word that necessarily had like an immediate, like, I know what that word is. And so like the fact that it's like a lot of people pronounce it differently, like that's part of it for me, is because it's this like weird wordless comic. It's kind of like different in a lot of ways. And so like having a title that people are a little unsure of, I think is good.
Well, now I have to check on Drome.
It is Drome. It is Drome.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I love, like, with a wordless comic, the one word. I was pronouncing all of Hydra 100% wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people say Hedra, and I guess to me it also like it ties into like a comic book thing. I feel like like people like names like Bill Sienkiewicz.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure it's Sienkiewicz.
Yeah.
But like I remember hearing it lots of different ways, and even like Liefeld, like these sort
even
of like,
Mignola, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so like I feel like having it be something where it's like it could be open to interpretation is good.
Oh man, I love it. I'm going to put you on the spot before we get out of here, Jesse, because we were talking about, you know, maybe Watchmen's not the best comic to give a new reader, and we're always curious about how we introduce friends who don't read comics to comics, and where do we go with that? You know, what book would we give our friend Jill? You know, what book would we give our friend William?
Right.
Do you have a book that you think is highly accessible to the most people that you think would get people excited about comics?
I don't know. People are so different in what they like. But Domu maybe would be the one.
Yeah,
because it's really good, and it's also like short. Like I feel it's like a very readable comic. So like manga, I think is hard to recommend often because it's like, yeah, this is 17 volumes or something. And Domu is this nice, like short, creepy, like manga, and then it just, I feel like as you're reading it, it's like, this is really good. It just gets like better and better as it goes on. So that might be the one.
Out of print right now.
Oh, great! I chose a Japanese comic that's out of print.
I think it is coming. I think it is coming back into print, and we just scored a copy over at McKay's Used Books.
Okay.
I was very excited to run across it.
Oh, it's out of print. That's too bad. Yeah, I don't, something. I don't know. Like, I guess it depends on the age too. That was the first one that came to mind.
No, I love that. I love that pick. I love that pick.
Maybe like Mad Love, the Harley Quinn story with Bruce Timm and Paul Dini, like, because I feel that might have like things that are sort of familiar to people, and it also gets them into sort of like, you know, the Western superhero stuff, but it's also like an art style that they're probably familiar with. It's a good story. Again, also it's like short, like, and so like I feel that's sort of like one of the intimidating things with comics is like coming in like cold, like picking up an X-Men book is impossible. Like, you know, like it's, I don't know all of these characters, and like that was probably like when I started reading comics, I didn't like the X-Men because it was just constant being like, who's this? Like, who's this? Who's this? And I feel like something that people can read, digest in sort of like one piece is a good thing. So maybe Mad Love. I like that one.
We love both of those suggestions. Those are great picks. Jesse, thank you so much for hanging out with us today, chatting Ms. True's. Now, this is the other thing. I think you said Ms. True's doll earlier, too.
Did I? No, I said...
Okay. All right, just
we
checking.
feel completely insecure now about a pronunciation of anything.
If I did, I misspoke. It's
okay.
But think how much fun we're going to have correcting people in the future.
Oh, I don't even correct people, though. It's the thing. Like, you know, like you brought it up, and I was like, oh yeah, she did say it wrong. Like I just let people go. Like,
you're the creator, we're the fan. We're the ones who get to correct people. We're the ones with the irrational but fervid ownership of things.
Yeah. The creator is like, I don't know, it's out of my hands. Like I'm done with it. So.
Oh man! Well, we loved the first issue of Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea. We're really excited for the rest of them.
Yeah,
and I'm excited for you. Oh shoot! What's the title? I'm going to say Accra or Arca. Arca from IDW coming out in July too.
Yeah.
Excited about that.
Truesdale. It's weird how they lined up. Truesdale is coming out starting in May, monthly for 4 issues. And then Arca is a graphic novel coming out in July. So yeah,
gonna be a good year.
It's the summer of Lonergan.
Yeah,
that's
summer of Lonergan. You heard it here first. So thank you, Jesse, for joining us and chatting.
Oh, thank you.
Once again, our thanks to Jesse Lonergan for coming on the show to talk about Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea, out May 17th in all your rad comic book shops. Put it in your pull box now.
Isn't that fun? You literally are at the comic book store now, enjoying free comic book day.
Okay, first off, right off. All right, if you are in a comic book store and you are listening to us, with your earbuds, I need you to tweet at us or message us, cbccpodcast@gmail.com or at CBCC Podcast on Instagram and Twitter, and let us know, because that is like a fantasy that I have, and I want it to be real.
How fun is that? Oh, but I lost my train of thought. So
I'm sorry.
I brought that up.
Yes.
Oh, so isn't it nice? You're at the comic book store now, and you're going to be back at the comic book store on May 17th. Like, the future is bright.
Yeah. You're in a shop, open a pull box if you don't have one already. I love the idea of someone opening a pull box on Free Comic Book Day.
Yeah, I think that's beautiful. It's like getting married on Valentine's Day, or being president on President's Day, or being a tree on Arbor Day.
Hey, yeah.
Or being in labor on Labor Day. Or being on a Segway during the segue where I segue into what I actually wanted to talk about. Like the part about this conversation with Jesse that like sticks in my mind is how he speaks in absolutes about the way that he makes comics. Mm-hmm. And he talks about how like he doesn't believe that you can create a sense of time as the comic book artist. And, like, how, like, other artists might use repeated panels as a way to create a sense of time. I'm not a comic book creator, but I am a comic book reader. And I feel like I've said that artists who repeat panels, like, create a sense of time.
Yeah, I mean, but I think also, you know, in that conversation, I agreed with him that the reader ultimately is in control of time when reading a comic book.
Yeah. So I think of it like as a musician.
Sure,
like,
of course you do.
A reader, like if you're a reader of music, like the composition can suggest a tempo, but ultimately it's your piece of music. You get to set the tempo, but there is also something to duration.
Right. So you set the tempo and you can't control what the musician's going to do with it.
Yeah, exactly.
But
you put all of the pieces in place to go like, this is ultimately what I would here's an image of the way, like, so just like a piece of printed sheet music is a picture of a way something should sound. Reading a comic book is them creating a picture of the way they want you to think.
Yeah, and what I like so much about Jesse Lonergan comics is that in the way that they are constructed, they kind of force you to consider that question of pacing and time.
But to me, my takeaway is to be a strong artist, you have to have a point of view. And I think that will tend you to speak in absolutes, even though there are a million ways that comic books are made and a million ways that they are successful.
Well, we talk about that also in terms of criticism, right? You know, as a critic, you are going to criticize, and in criticizing, you create this sense of objectivity that does not actually exist.
But it sounds like I'm criticizing Jesse, and I'm really not. No. Like what I'm saying is, like, I wonder if it's, like, less fun for him to read comics because he has in his brain absolutes of what comics should be. I don't know. It's just, like, that thing, that tendency is, like, in the back of my mind. Like,
well, he has a point. What you're saying is he has a point of view. And he has to have a point of view, and he has to sharpen that point of view through the creation of his comics.
Yes.
And we benefit from that, and it's up to us to decide whether we agree that the reader is ultimately in charge of time or the creator is in charge of time.
I am like the opposite of an absolutist. I always see things things can be a million ways, and I personally find that like paralyzing. It's hard for me to make a decision because I see a million right decisions and a million shades of what is right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, I think like thinking absolutes is kind of like a superpower that I do not possess. Or like maybe it's a tool I'm not using, a skill I'm not building.
With one issue consumed on our end of Ms. Truesdale and the Fall of Hyperborea, we're super excited to get that second issue and to see where this series goes. We love everything that Dark Horse and Mike Mignola have been doing with this particular universe. We've had Rob Williams on the show talking about about Hyperborea. We've had Warwick Johnson Cadwell on the show talking about his collaborations with Mike Mignola. Look in the show notes, find links to those episodes. One day we will actually get Mike Mignola on the podcast
the dream.
and really dig in to that man's weird and wonderful world. But until then, that makes it sound like until then you just got to deal with these other guys.
That's not how we feel. But it does feel like an honor that we get to watch a universe being built.
I just love touching Mike Mignola in any way possible.
That's right.
And I love to touch Mike Mignola through Jesse Lonergan in this episode. Thank you all for listening. We really hope you had a wonderful free comic book day. We hope you got a lot of great free comics. We hope you bought a lot of great comics. And we hope that you've opened up a pull box today while listening to us. Again, let us know if that's the case.
And let us know what your number is. Oh, unless it's a secret. Should you keep your number a secret?
What?
I guess somebody could go to your
pull box number.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, don't tell anyone your pull box.
Also,
number.
give us your social security number and your mother's maiden name.
If you'd like to know more about Free Comic Book Day, it's been around for over 20 years at this point. It was created by Joe Field over at Flying Color Comics in Concord, California. Head on over to the Short Box podcast. Link in the show notes. Our friend Botter just spoke to Joe about all things Free Comic Book Day. It's a really wonderful conversation, well worth your time. Just like that trip to Annapolis, Maryland you're going to do, going to the new Third Eye Comics mega store. Wow.
It sounds like you got a lot on your plate.
A lot on your plate. Thank you, everyone. We got to get out of here, Lisa.
Yeah, but we can't just let these people go without telling them what the future holds.
Yes, our next counseling session episode is discussing Mark and Eve. It is our third episode talking about Mark and Eve from Invincible. We are covering the trade paperback Full House. Mark has returned from his past. 5 years has gone by. Things are different. Lisa's upset. Mark's upset. Tara's upset. I am very excited to get into that very strange story as we approach the very end of the Invincible saga.
Our love expert for Mark and Eve is, of course, Dr. Mark Brackett, using his book Permission to Feel. So have your mood meter ready. We want to know what quadrant you're in. Also, sitting in the can is a really rad interview.
Yes.
We talk Minor Threats with Patton Oswalt and Jordan Bloom.
That's pretty rad. Yeah, that conversation is also a big-time delight. So you've got a lot of great comic book couples counseling in your near future.
Yes. Where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you, Brad?
You can find me on all social medias at MouthDork. If you have words of affirmation for our logo, you can send them to Aaron Prescott at A Cool Hand Fluke. And if you have some radical words of affirmation for our radical banner art and show poster, send them to Karen Charm at Karen_X-Men fan. Lisa, where can our listeners send their words of affirmation to you, radical or otherwise?
Sometimes I just see my entire vocabulary as just like a sea of buttons. I just keep going to the same button every time. Mine is the dream today. Yours is radical.
That's right.
I am always accepting words of affirmation at Sidewalk Siren on Instagram, Twitter, and Hive. If you'd like to spend more quality time with us, you can subscribe to us on Podbean, Stitcher, YouTube, Google, and Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to get exclusive, you can join.
Yeah.
Our Patreon,
where
you'll get more content, including weekly bonus episodes.
And you'll get some words of affirmation in the next episode. If you'd like to reach out and touch us electronically, you can email the podcast, cbccpodcast@gmail.com. You can visit our website, comicbookcouplescounseling.com, or follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Hive Social. I got to take that out of
the copy.
Yeah, I got to remove that from the copy. At CBCC Podcast.
You can give us a gift of 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And if you'd like to do an act of service, why not write a review of the show while you're there? We are fluent and receptive in all 5 love languages. It really warms our hearts and helps the pod.
So until next time, friends, keep your love tank full.
And your psychic rapport open.
Doopy doopy. Bum bum ba da bum bum ba da ba.